How's it going, guys? And welcome to your Hell in the Cell review. This show, I'm gonna basically call it the the night of the bad finishes, because after the main event, I was just like so let down. The wrestling tonight, it wasn't really bad. Like stuff going on during the match. There were plenty of eye-rolling moments, and we're going to get to them in a moment here, but that main event, the fact that they could end it like that, it might have not been as bad as the ending to Hell in a Cell 2019 with The Fiend and Seth Rollins, but it probably was even lamer due to the fact that the match was actually good and they decided to just completely fuck it up with a terrible finish like that. So let's start off. We had Bianca Belair defeating Bayley in, what was for the most part, in certain parts, I had to say it was like an okay Hell in the Cell match. These two girls, they seemed like they were working pretty hard in here, but so much goofy shit, and it kind of like, in a weird way, fit into the build-up because it was equally goofy and cringy. But like these spots of like working the hair, at first Bayley starts working the arm, and I'm like, okay, maybe we'll get some kind of like technical wrestling here, because we've seen this from Bayley before. It's not like she's a terrible wrestler or anything. I just say her character is horrendous, and I don't like her promos because they give her extensive promo time on SmackDown. And if we want to watch an episode of SmackDown and review it here for the channel, we have to sit through it and cringe at it. So I talk about that pretty much every week. So now we've got this match here, and she just forgets about working the arm. She says, screw that, and starts, tying Bianca's hair onto chairs and different parts, of the ring and onto different objects. And then Bianca starts slamming her braid, her hair extension, her weave onto the steel chair that Bayley is holding. And at this point, I'm saying to myself, Like, are we being told here that that Bianca's hair is that powerful, that strong? Now, I'm sure if you hit somebody with it, it probably would hurt. It's a pretty heavy hair extension. But my God, I'm sitting here watching this Hell in the Cell, thinking back to Mankind and The Undertaker. Thinking back to Shawn Michaels and Triple H beating each other senseless to a bloody pulp. These ferocious, fierce, intense, drama-filled Hell in the Cell matches. And, also seeing Bayley pick up the steel steps, which we've been told for years weigh over 200 pounds. That kind of, really just completely just bashes the head in of a suspension of disbelief. I mean, I know at this point in the wrestling world that our sense of the wrestling reality has been completely just annihilated as far as it could possibly go. I mean, there's no chance of restoring suspension of disbelief at this point. But my Lord, I'm just saying, like, you're picking up the steel steps, and later on the main event, we're seeing Drew McIntyre and Lashley picking up the steel steps, and we're being told basically, like, Bayley is as strong as those people. Well, maybe I won't go that far with it, but the fact that she's picking up the steel steps after years and years and decades of being told that these steel steps are, like, of a vast weight. That to me, I could do without. You don't need to have these girls using the steel steps. So we get the ladder involved, and Bianca gets the kiss of death onto the open ladder, which seemed to be a pretty dangerous spot. There was also a sunset flip and a spot right into the cage wall, which looked really dangerous. It looked good, but it looked extremely dangerous, especially for women, you don't even see the guys really doing anything dangerous like that. You didn't even see Lashley or Drew do anything dangerous like that. And yeah, I know a lot of fans out there will be like, oh, that's why they're better workers. And that ain't the case at all. Anyway, there was a kendo stick spot where we had Bayley bridging the kendo sticks between the cage and the ring, and I thought that was pretty creative. So for the most part, it was okay, but the hair, tie-up spots, those were so lame, and especially the chair versus hair. Oh, I get it now because it rhymed, but it's not even like the announcers even said that spot. So, thank God they didn't, but I'm just saying, it's my job here to make lame jokes, so it works for me, not for them. Thank God they didn't say that. Could you imagine? Could you imagine hearing Pat McAfee say chair versus hair? Yeah, I probably would have turned it off at that time too. Well, who am I kidding? I'd probably finish it up to review it here and then make fun of it, kind of like I'm doing now. But anyway, we'll move on. We've got Seth Rollins defeating Cesaro. So, we knew that Cesaro wasn't going to get 3 wins in a row over Rollins. Does anybody even care if he did at this point? Would it even matter? No, I don't think it really would. So I don't know why, it was like so dire to give Rollins the win here. And he wins with a small package. And this was like going on forever. They were hitting like 1,000 moves. It was like one of these types of contests where, where who could hit the most moves. And this is like what I hate about today's wrestling. Because, I hear all these morons saying, well, the match quality is so much better now. There's more moves in the match. The amount of moves in the match doesn't make it better unless you're Dave Meltzer and you're rating this on a star system. I remember there was one point in my life when I used to say that, well, why in Ring of Honor there's so many more moves than on WWE? And I used to think that at the time, and I was like, oh man, these guys on the indies, they're doing more moves. And then I realized that that's, minus the drama, minus, everything else that goes into a match, the psychology, and also just the performers themselves. So the amount of moves, it doesn't really matter as much as a lot of people will tell you here on YouTube. Just saying. But anyway, we'll move on here. Yeah, this match, it didn't do anything for me, and it was very long. I know it was probably only like 15 minutes, but it felt like it was 20 minutes. Like, it's at a time where, like, we're just hitting moves, move after move after move. It's kind of like, just end it already. And then it ends with a small package. One of these lame-ass Japanese indie finishes where, oh, we hit all these moves, but I gotcha with a roll-up. Oh, that's so cute. Anyway, then we get Alexa Bliss defeating Shayna Baszler. I was really disinterested in this match. I think back to years ago when I did my top 10 women of all time, and I actually put Alexa Bliss, I think, at the number 10 spot, because I still really do see a lot of greatness in Bliss. It's just this terrible creative and everything, and the fact that they're dressing her up like a 10-year-old girl. And, I get why they're doing this, because it was supposed to be part of the Bray Wyatt thing, and he was, supposed to be a host. And I get this is kind of like, the big comfy couch and everything, and dressing up, like as a little girl when you're a woman to entertain the kids, except the fact that we're not really here to entertain kids. Anyway, I don't really get it. Like, because Bray didn't dress up as a little kid. He dressed up as a man, with like a sweater vest and everything. He dressed up as Mr. Rogers. So why does she have to dress up as a little girl? And we don't even have Bray Wyatt here to begin with. So I don't know where they're going with this. Also, it's like Shayna didn't have anything to say really about the doll. They kind of just brushed it under the rug. Oh, yeah. I was trapped in a room with a doll that was following me, a possessed doll, and here we are. Here's the match, guys. Like, okay, I get it. Some people argue maybe it's better off they got away from the doll because it was getting goofy. But, if maybe they did this in the correct way, it actually could be entertaining. It might be a little goofy, but, when you just drop an angle altogether, that's even worse because it just shows that you have no concern for what you did last week or the week before. So there was no reason for Shayna not to even, not be on Raw last week. You had thought something happened to her. Nothing happened to her. She was as right as rain, not a scratch on her, nothing. Instead, we switch focus to Nia Jax on the outside, and we've got Alexa raising her arm, and that's what Nia does too. Then suddenly she screams, and Nia screams back like she's mimicking her, like she's possessing her. I thought what Bliss was going to do, the same thing she did in that match, I think it was with Bayley, where she pretended like her arm was dislocated. I thought that could have been the right spot here, because when Shayna was working her arm and doing the joint manipulation thing, I thought it would have been good to have Alexa kind of fool her and kind of do the mind games thing. But of course, they didn't think of that. Not like it would have really saved the match or made it 10 times better. But I thought like if they could recycle a spot, they could have done it here, because probably nobody other than myself even remembers that. So I guess now they're going to switch focus from Shayna over to Nia. Also, yeah, she mimicked a slap, and then Nia slapped Reginald in the face. So we've got some type of mind control gimmick going on. So first it's dolls, now it's mind control. So we're just kind of jumping around from thing to thing, from place to place, with no real focus or anything like that. We're just basically going from one thing to the other. And I think basically before the end of the year, you're going to see Alexa Bliss probably switch focus, and she's not even going to have this gimmick anymore. But we'll move on to the next thing on the show, and it was Sami Zayn defeating Kevin Owens. And what I found really humorous about this is Pat McAfee was saying, was Owens coughing up blood? I thought they weren't even supposed to call blood, but remember when they released that sheet years ago where they said they couldn't call blood or say anything like that they when they might have accidentally cut themselves in the ring, they were supposed to ignore it per Vince's orders, but maybe not. Anyway, it was clear that Owens wasn't coughing up blood. It was just basically spit. He was selling the Commander Aziz Samoan Spike, or the Nigerian Nail. Anyway, that I kind of like that. Owens did that a few weeks ago when he was beat up backstage. Remember, he was selling the back, and I praised him for that. Here, he was constantly coughing. He was acting like he was running out of air, and it kind of sells that move a little bit. I kind of like that they did that, because he did, take a thumb to the throat, and they're kind of making like, oh, he's still feeling the after effects because it only happened 2 days ago. So I like that. Kevin Owens might be a big fat donut muncher, but sometimes I've said he does good things, and there are positive traits to him, which is more than what I could say for a lot of other people on the roster, who don't really offer a whole lot. Owens does have confidence in him, and you can see that. But the funny thing is, it's not Owens who ends up bleeding. It's Zayn from the mouth. The same spot that would make sense for Kevin, Zayn does it by accident. And I guess they were able to call blood because they said bloody, battered, and beaten, and Zayn was bleeding from the mouth. And this was so weird because it was the reverse. All they had to do was just give Owens a blood capsule to chew on, and it would have been fine. No one's saying he had to blade the inside of his mouth or anything like that, but it really would have added to the effect, because here's McAfee talking about him coughing up blood, and obviously he wasn't. They're zooming in on Owens, and we clearly see it that it's just loogies and nothing more. Anyway, Zayn ends up does the haluva kick to Owens, and gets the pin. So, Owens loses this one because he was at a disadvantage because he was selling the injury. It was an okay match, I suppose. We've seen it 1,000 times over and over. Like I said, I much prefer some type of storytelling with Zayn. But they seem like they're kind of getting away from that. The conspiracy angle is really fading away, and now it's just back to Sami Zayn, the wrestler, again. And, here he is again, doing somersault planches, which is something he hadn't done in ages. And here he's back to doing that again. Being the world-class athlete, as Michael Cole announced him as. A world-class athlete, Sami Zayn. You look at Sami Zayn, and do you see world-class athlete? Like, those are accolades they used to say for Kurt Angle or Triple H. World-class athlete, Sami Zayn, looking like Sami Zayn. Yeah, okay. That's why I said it's so crucial, if they're going to have Sami Zayn in a prominent spot on the roster, that they really play this guy up, play up his character. Not the wrestling part of it. Of course, it has to come into the ring eventually. But here we are, Sami Zayn and Owens fight forever. How about fight never again? That would be great. But of course, there's going to be a rematch here because Zayn won, and you know how it goes. Owens is probably going to have to keep having matches with him until they decide to book him to win. Of course, where are they even going with Owens? Here we are, we go from world title reign. So, first we start off with him beating Cena, Owens. And then we put him in a feud with Zayn. Then we give him a world title run. Then he goes back to Zayn. And then he always finds his way back to Sami Zayn. And I think that's part of the thing right there. But it's kind of like a meme at this point. No matter what you do with Owens, he's always going to find his way back into a meaningless feud with Sami Zayn in some way, shape, or form. Always comes back to Zayn. Like I said, they should just have the guys just make out on TV, because that would make the most sense to me, because it's like they're magnetized to each other. They can't get them away from one another. I mean, for God's sakes, you had Sami Zayn basically making out with Owens' image when he was watching it on the monitor backstage on SmackDown. I talked about that in my review. I'm kidding. I don't want to see that, and I don't think you do either. But anyway, we'll move on. Charlotte defeated Rhea Ripley by disqualification. I don't get this. Like, Rhea Ripley actually, is the one to get disqualified, and she's supposed to be the baby face? I don't get it. I really don't. And, just kind of watching this, just Rhea Ripley just, I don't know. I see, Charlotte in there, and she looks like a pro. Rhea Ripley, to me, just kind of seems lost. This wasn't really a bad match, but it wasn't a great one or a good one either, or not even really a decent one. It was an okay one. And just at the end, it's kind of like, well, how do we get out of this? So what does Rhea Ripley do when they're near the announce table? She takes the top of the table and smashes it into Charlotte's face. And I'm just kind of saying, that right there, that was a really lame way to end this, and also a really confusing way to end it too, because it doesn't make any sense in terms of the characters. She's supposed to be good, so wouldn't that make more sense for Charlotte to do that as the heel? Because she can't win and she's getting frustrated. But it actually kind of looked like Charlotte was ready to win on a number of occasions, and so unless they realize that Rhea Ripley is not cut out for being a baby face, and no one's really going to get behind them when they go back out on the road, because this is it. This is gonna be the last pay-per-view they're gonna do in the Thunderdome. They're gonna go back on the road, and Money in the Bank is gonna be in front of the crowd. So maybe they're kind of weighing their options here. But they already saw that like Charlotte doesn't work as a face. So they decided a long time ago to just make her a heel. And what happened, because all the Smarks don't like her, so they decided, let's keep her as a heel. This way, like, the Smarks can't give her a hard time. Because the Smarks cheer the heels, yay! Because, they're counterculture, I guess. Anyway, yeah, just a really confusing finish there that, to me, it didn't make any sense from the character perspectives. And, like, I didn't watch Raw, but what happened with Nikki? I thought she was supposed to be involved in this in some way, shape, or form. She didn't get involved or anything like that. Nothing. Anyway, let's get to this main event so we can finish up here. We've got Bobby Lashley defeating Drew McIntyre in a Hell in a Cell match. Thank God, I will say that this headlined, and they didn't go for Bayley and Bianca, because I thought that they would probably do that. You notice this was the reverse of WrestleMania, and that was probably the point. I don't think it was because it was an unpopular decision. I think it was mostly just because they just wanted to reverse it, because it was their turn. And, I said it time and time again, the world title, whatever world title it is, or whatever show, it should always be going on last. Unless it's something way, way, way more important, but in nowadays wrestling, there's nothing that's going to be more important than that, basically. So, so we've got this Hell in a Cell match, and it's pretty good. I think they even went a little overboard in this. Like, it kind of seemed like it could have ended on a number of occasions, but I'm not really complaining. It was good. I really did genuinely like the spot where Lashley had Drew in the Hurt Lock at ringside, when they were, outside the ring, still inside the cell, and Drew drove Lashley like in through the table that was leaning up against the cell. I thought that was good. They really got a very bad camera angle when Lashley drove Drew through the ringside table from inside the ring with the spine buster. I don't know. They've said this on a number of occasions. They're working with different staff, as what's evidenced by the terrible sound that we get on SmackDown. Especially when they're backstage, the horrible sound mix. But they also miss a lot of shots too. That's not as noticeable. The visuals to me most of the time are okay, but man, they really fucked up and got a terrible angle. They showed the replay again from another camera, and it's still way too close. Like, they totally blew it. They do that big spot, and you're only you see it, but you don't see the bottom of the table. Like, the whole thing should be in the frame. And this is some basic ass shit, and they couldn't even get that right. And you think of Kevin Dunn, and this guy is he thinks of things in a cinematography style of thinking, as he should. This is supposed to be big time production in $1 billion company, and this looked like amateur hour. I mean, I had seen better camera angles on a Ring of Honor DVD, to be quite honest. I mean, that was a little bit embarrassing. You've got these expensive ass cameras, and what do we get? We get these angles that are disastrous. And I mean, the rest of the match was shot good, but they really blew this big time. I expected to see the whole shot here, but enough about that anyway. So MVP gets involved. Drew gets a visible pin on Lashley. But MVP ends up getting himself locked inside the cage with Drew. Drew hits the Claymore on MVP. But Lashley then gets in control, but then Drew gets back in control. It's going back and forth. They do a few more spots, And then it looks like Drew is about to hit a Claymore on Lashley. MVP grabs Drew's foot. And then Lashley comes up from behind and he schoolboys him. He schoolboys Drew for the 3 count. And the match is over. 3 count. So we're going through tables. We're hitting finishers. And this is how it ends. 2 table spots. 2 big table spots. We're seeing Drew, being able to withstand shots from a kendo stick. He's getting pummeled, with a cane, with MVP's cane on the outside. He's getting trapped on a kendo stick that's being wedged in through the cell walls. I don't really particularly like that they repeated the kendo stick when Bayley and Bianca were doing the kendo sticks in their match. Enough with the kendo sticks already. Remember when that used to be exclusive to the Sandman and Steve Blackman? Now everyone is all of a sudden an expert with a kendo stick. I've talked about this before, but anyway, such a lame way to finish up this match. I mean, this match had a big feel. They were doing a lot of stuff. It was very impressive. I mean, these are 2 guys that if you're gonna have 2 guys, being able to kick out of a lot of stuff and have false finishes, but they didn't really even have false finishes. There wasn't really even like a lot of pins or anything. It was just a lot of like withstanding things and guys not being in the right spot to get the pin on the other one, except for like MVP dragging the ref out. So, but you just don't want to end it this way. I mean, they could have done something better with MVP coming up from behind, maybe hit Drew in the back of the head with the cane. At least you could say, Lashley had to get an assist from MVP. He was assisting him through the whole match. So whatever the case may be, it made Drew look even worse, losing to a fucking roll-up. I mean, he's able to go toe-to-toe to Lashley and withstand all these big, high-impact moves. Again, with the cutesy indie finish to a Hell in a Cell match that was done right. Such a weird, bizarre decision here. I don't know. I don't want to go. Maybe I was getting a little carried away in the beginning by saying it was as, it could be considered as worse as 2019's finish. But this is just, it was a finish that they could have done it so much better. They don't have to do something overblown. Like I said, just do something simple like that. Have MVP hit him in the head, then have Lashley just, spear him, or hit the hurt lock on him. And, Drew could just pass out in the hold, basically. He could do that again. All right? Not that hard. But, instead we get the cutesy roll-up finish. Tee! Anyway, what'd you guys think in the comments down below? This was just 3 women's matches. I mean, seriously, 3 of them? 3? Isn't that a little bit overkill? And, seriously, 2 Hell in a Cell matches? Just, thank God there wasn't 3. But 2 Hell in a Cell matches, it's just so overkill. They need to get rid of these pay-per-views named after match types. And just go back to having them whenever they see fit. You don't have to have I'm sick of having an elimination chamber because it's elimination chamber, or having a TLC match because it's TLC. So, that's the same. It's Hell in a Cell, so we have to have the Hell in a Cells. It kills the unpredictability. I don't know how they don't see this, because we've been rolling with these pay-per-views for over a decade now. Time to stop it. Anyway, thanks again, guys, for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bells to get all notifications when I post all my new videos. I want to thank all my patrons for your continued support. And, guys, I will see you next time.